Is Ms. Crockett for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for being here. I know it's a long day. I'm actually out of Texas, and so I'm a little familiar with border issues. But I first want to begin by making it clear that Democrat or Republican, I think that we all can agree that there is an issue in this country as it relates to drugs, period. And I also want to be clear for anyone that may not know, but all drugs come across all borders, to be perfectly honest. It's not just fentanyl, and that has been an issue for quite some time. We also know that fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, and we know that the opioid epidemic has been on the rise for quite some time. But I do want to make sure that I clarify a few things. This is what happens when you're at the end. You've got to clarify a few things. So number one, it's my understanding that the number for 2019 was 900,000 instead of the claim that, you know, the numbers somehow were on the rise, seemingly insinuating once President Biden was in office. But that 900,000 number that was crossing in 2019 was double what we had seen in the past decade. And in 2019, the president was still Trump. So I do want to do that, as well as I want to acknowledge the fact that in 2020, we know that COVID was happening, which was also complicating issues, and not every country had the same access to be able to survive COVID. We know that the United States was actually leading the world as it relates to trying to survive this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, and the rest of the world was following us. So for some people, it legitimately was life or death, and honestly, it typically is a life or death issue. I also want to ask you one quick question about the cartels. As someone who has had to deal with cartels in courtrooms before, we know that they are quite powerful. We know that they are also problematic. And it is my understanding that the cartels were continually spreading disinformation so that people would cross the border, because guess what? If there are more people crossing the border, does that not make it more difficult for y'all to spot the cartels in a big crowd versus if it's just a couple of people that are crossing over?